about Billie's experience integrating schools in America in the 1950s. Leading into that, I want to take a few minutes to talk about newspaper publishers Robert Sengstack Abbott and John H. Sengstack. As Robert Abbott's legacy has paved the way for so many things that happened for the Black community and humanity during the 20th century. So Robert Abbott went to Hampton Institute, and he was part of the Hampton Quartet. They were traveling to Chicago in 1893. He went to the Columbian Exposition over at the Museum of Science and Industry with the grounds there. And he heard Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells speak. That inspired him to put down roots in Chicago. So his journey in Chicago was a little rough because he wanted to become a lawyer, and he went to Kent Law School, but afterwards he was told that he really wouldn't make much headway in that field because he was too dark. So he decided to become a defender of his people by starting a newspaper. He felt that that was the best way for him to serve the community and the world. So after starting the newspaper in 1905, he discovered that because the community didn't have a voice, one day he woke up and he was very influential. As time went on, he covered things like the race riots. He was a fierce advocate of anti-lynching and so forth. So his nephew, John Sengstack, Robert Abbott didn't have any children, and he sent John Sengstack to Hampton. And John became the publisher when Robert Abbott passed away in 1940, and he continued his legacy. So one of the things that John did was in 1945, he started the Chicago Defender Charities. And the Charities has continued on the legacy with continuing the Bud Billiken Parade. And in 1949, they implemented the Royal Court of the Bud Billiken Parade. I am so happy to say that one of our youth from the Royal Court, our Crown Princess J.L. Green, is a budding cinematographer. Her father has been teaching her photography and cinematographer since she was 9 years old. And she's quite amazing, and we may be sitting in the presence of
another legacy.
The great things that she will do. I'm also very happy to say that my daughter is here. She is carrying on the legacy. She is the president and CEO of the Chicago Defender Charities, and it is my joy to be able to continue to work with them. Now, in keeping with our story with Billie, John Sengstack he worked hard on integration. In the 1940s, he worked on the Double V campaign, Victory Abroad and Victory at Home for the Black soldiers. He worked alongside Paul Robeson to get the Major Baseball League integrated. He worked we brought Harry Truman to Chicago as he worked on integrating the armed forces. So this kind of leads us into Billie's story. as the defender laid the groundwork for so many of these breakthroughs.
Thanks.
Billie, why did you decide to tell your story at this time?
Well, 3 reasons. But we all have a story to tell, and we all should be committed to telling our story. There were 3 reasons why I wanted to tell my story. The first was a promise that I had made to my son. In May of 2014, I went to Atlanta to celebrate Mother's Day with Tim. And he said he had a surprise for me. So I said, what is it? He said, I have signed us up for StoryCorps, and I want to interview you. And many of you are familiar with StoryCorps. And he said, I want to interview you because you need to tell your story. And I said, well, Tim, my story is not any different from everybody else's story. He said, well, then let them tell theirs too. But I want you to tell yours. So I protested and complained, and we had to drive halfway across Atlanta, but I did. And he interviewed me about my civil rights activities. And when I finished, he said, Mom, even I had no idea what all you had done and what you had gone through. He said, promise me that you will write your book and tell your legacy. 2 years and a month later, Tim died from a hereditary blood disorder. So this event today is my way of keeping my promise. The second reason why is because we all have a story to tell, and we need to be able to tell it. As Maya Angelou said, there is no greater pain than carrying a story inside of you that never gets told. And the third reason is to take my little small place in history. And I'm going to show from the time chart. Oops. Okay, what do I do with this? Just hold it. Of course, the teacher in me has to come to the board, right? I want you to look at the timeline here. In 1960, Ruby Bridges. Oh, I do need a mic. Okay. Okay. In 1960, Ruby Bridges integrated France Elementary School in New Orleans, Louisiana. There are movies about her, there are documentaries about her, there are books about her. I had the pleasure, the mic is off. I had the pleasure of meeting her last month when she spoke here at Rockefeller Chapel. I took pictures with her. I told her about my experience. Of course, she didn't know about me, so my feelings were hurt. But aside from that, she was an amazing person. Look at 1957, the Little Rock Nine. If you Google now, who were the first African Americans to integrate a high school in the South, who comes up? The Little Rock Nine. I had the pleasure again of meeting Dr. Green, who was one of the Little Rock Nine. He too spoke here at Rockefeller Chapel in my neighborhood, but he at least had heard about us. So when you look at 1956, there were 6 African Americans who integrated Paducah Tillman High School in Paducah, Kentucky. Floyd Bolden, Donald Brown, Doris Kreider, Elsie Grayer, Billie Miller Gray, and Betty Petty. Nobody has heard about us. We're not in the history books. And the reason is we didn't have the drama and the violence. But that clear, and it wasn't newsworthy, But that clearly did not mean that it was not traumatic.
Amen. Absolutely. Thank you, Billie.
Okay, next
What
one.
was Paducah, Kentucky like? And how was it growing up there?
Well, Paducah was a small southern town in Kentucky. When I was living there, I think it had maybe 35,000 people. And the lines of segregation were very clear. We knew where we could and could not go. We knew what we could and could not do. But one of the things that we did have was a wonderful community. Everything was in our community, so there was no need to go out that often, outside. We had a restaurant, we had our schools, we had our churches, we had our social center, one social center. So we didn't have the need to go into areas where we were not wanted, and I was happy in my community. I had my friends, and I had the school that I loved.
Okay. Tell us about your parents. What were they like?
Well, both my parents finished Kentucky State, and my dad was a math teacher at a vocational school in Paducah. My mother, for a while, was elementary school teacher. And they were, my dad was a trailblazer. He was the vice president of the NAACP. He also had the NAACP sue the Tennessee Valley Authority to hire him as the first black electrical engineer when they moved when the Tennessee Valley decided to build a plant in Paducah.
Okay. What was your experience at all-black Lincoln High?
I loved Lincoln. I loved everything about Lincoln. We knew there were inadequacies and inequities because we would get the school books after Tillman had them. And some of that wasn't bad because the answers were sometimes already in the books. So we did, but I started Lincoln in 7th grade. Because the town was so small, the 7th through 12th grades was in one school. So we didn't have a swimming pool. We didn't have a chemistry lab. We didn't have a foreign language lab. And our multi-purpose room was everything. It was the gym, it was the cafeteria, it was the assembly hall. But we did have debate team, we had a drama club, we had girls and boys basketball, and I was quite popular. And what we did have were teachers who loved us and teachers who saw the best in us. And we sang the Black National Anthem every day, along with God Bless America. And we had Black History, they just called it civics. So I was highly visible and very popular. I was one of the youngest to be elected by popular vote, Miss Homecoming Queen. So there was nothing about Lincoln that I didn't love. Now we had been hearing rumors that they wanted to take some of the students from Lincoln and send them to Tillman and doing the integration. This was in '56. None of us thought that it would be us because none of us wanted to leave Lincoln. We didn't care what we didn't have because what we wanted and what we had was each other, the love, and our teachers who lived in our community. They went to our churches. They were in the same sororities and fraternities. So nobody was running to sign up to go integrate Tillman.
So knowing how much you loved Lincoln, why did your parents send you to integrate Tillman?
Well, my doomsday came July 1956 when my dad called me into the living room and told me he wanted to talk to me. And I was trying to figure out what I had done because he seemed so serious. And I was going into my junior year at Lincoln. He said, I have some good news for you. And I said, I thought we were going on a vacation or something. I said, oh, great, what is it? He said, you're one of the students that's going to integrate Tillman. And I said, oh no, that can't be right. I love Lincoln. Do you remember when I was Miss Homecoming Queen and then the band and then the drama and all that? I said, no, this has to be a mistake. I said, do I have a choice? And he said, no. And I said, why? He said, as I said, he was vice president of the NAACP. And he said, I can't ask other parents to do something with their children if I'm not willing to send mine. And I said, well, this is the end of my life as I know it. And he said, no, it'll be okay. So my mother remained pretty neutral, as she always did, with my educational decisions. So September 4th, 1956, 6 African American students enrolled in Tillman High School. We were the first, as I said, before Ruby Bridges, before the Little Rock Nine. We were all honor students at Lincoln. When we went to Tillman, they did not allow us to have any extracurricular activities. We couldn't be on any of the debate. I tried for the debates as much as I love to talk. I was good at debate at Lincoln. So they said no. And the one young man, L.C. Grayer, he was a good football player at Lincoln. And he wanted to play football at Tillman. And they said, you can play, but we cannot guarantee you your safety. Not here at Tillman, and not coming back and forth from school, and clearly not when you're playing in other places. So the school sent a clear and strong message. We have to take you, come to school, be a good student, and go home. We were all juniors that year. Now I'm speaking from my recollections of what happened at Tillman. The other 5 people may say something different, but I doubt they will. One experience I will share with you, well, there are a few, but this is one. The day we went to register, they put all the black students at one table, and nobody came to talk to us. The other students were at different tables, and they already knew the teachers because they had been at school for the few years. The teachers welcomed them, and they were talking to them, and they said, oh, we're so happy to have you in our class, and I'm Miss Jones, and you'll be the English, blah, blah, blah. Well, nobody came to talk to us except the Spanish teacher. And we all signed up for Spanish. And 3 of us, when we graduated, ended up majoring in Spanish because of that. So finally, after we sat there for so long, the guidance teacher came over, and she gave us our schedules. And she said, oh, I've made out your schedule, here they are. And we look like, we don't even know our teachers. All the other students knew their teachers because they had been talking to them. So we walked into our classes, not knowing who the teachers were. The principal had been at Tillman for over 35 years. It was time for him to go. He was ill-equipped to deal with the change. He didn't know how to deal with the change of integrating, and he didn't know how to deal with the change of students. And at the end of that first year, he did retire. At Tillman, I had my first experience with unfair grading. No matter how many A's I made on my papers, on my test, the English teacher would never give me anything but a B. So one day I got fed up. I said, I'm going to ask her. I hope they put me out now and go back to Lincoln. So I asked her why. And she said, well, and they called me Billie Jean in the South. Well, Billie Jean, I thought you would be happy to get a B. And I said, but my papers and my test scores are all A's. Why would I be happy getting a B? And she did give me a B plus, but the only time I got an A was when we were on standardized tests where the scores were so high that you didn't have a choice but to do that. Tillman's first dilemma came at the junior prom. We were juniors, and the prom was held outside of the school at some private venue. So one day I got called down to the office by the older man that was still the principal then, and he said, I need to talk to you. Well, when the teacher said go to the office, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong because I was hardly afraid to breathe. So I knew I hadn't acted up. So he said, I want to talk to you. I didn't know he had called the other black students down as well. He said, I want to talk to you. He said, I don't think it's a good idea for you Negroes, and I'll be using Negro and black interchangeably depending on the time because that's what the era was. I don't think it's a good idea for you Negroes to come to the prom. He said, we have to take you at the school because that's now the law. But the community and the parents are not ready for Negroes and whites to socialize together. He said, you all have been good students. You haven't caused any trouble, so we need you to do this. And we did.
Okay, since you had been asked not to come to the junior prom, did you think that you would also be asked not to come to senior activities?
Yes, we thought we would, but my dad said that we were seniors and that the NAACP, who by the way hadn't done anything since they sent us to Tillman, they didn't really prepare us. So they said that, he said, you're going to the activities. Now there were two activities that they had. One was the dinner and one was the school dance. Well, this year, at least in their wisdom, they decided to have the senior prom dance at the school. So that was not the issue. So we got called into the office again. It was a new principal, but the philosophy was the same. And this principal said, well, you Negro students can come to the prom this year because is that a feedback somewhere? Because it's in the school. He said, but you can't come to the senior dinner. Now, the senior dinner was at the Irving Cobb Hotel, which was the most prestigious hotel in all of Western Kentucky, which borders between the Ritz-Carlton and the Hyatts here. So he said because the hotel said that they could not allow Negroes in because it would send a message that they now accept Negroes and they don't. And that the only Negroes that are ever allowed at all in the Irving Cobb are those that work there, and they have to come in the back door. So I went home and told my dad, and he went and talked to the school, and the school went and talked to the Irving Cobb Hotel, and the Irving Cobb Hotel said, well, they can come, but they won't be able to eat with the white students, with their white classmates. We'll set up a separate place for them to eat close to where the help does. And my father, again, he said, that's not acceptable. And the NAACP went and talked to the school. And they said, for the first time, we will boycott and we will protest. Because while Paducah was bragging about how wonderful they had integrated without fanfare and drama, Sturgis, Kentucky, which was 62 miles away, was having the National Guard and riots and everything. So my dad said they're going to the senior dinner. You knew you had Negro students. You knew the Irvin Cobb didn't take them. You knew they were seniors. Why would you plan to have it there? So they went back and talked to the Irvin Cobb again, and they finally relented with a very strong message to the black community of Paducah. This is not about you ever thinking you can come here. We are doing this because we don't want the publicity that Sturgis had. And the most heartwarming thing about that whole experience was when the waiters came to wait on us, and they all would lean down and whisper in our ear, "We are so proud of you." I think.
After graduating from Tillman in May of 1958, where did you want to attend college?
The only place I ever wanted to go was Fisk. I applied to Fisk. It's static somewhere. I applied to Fisk and I got accepted. I was just overjoyed. I was telling everybody I was going to be a Fiskite. I wanted to go to Fisk so badly that they should give me an honorary bachelor's degree for the people that are sitting here from Fisk. I tell you. So I was planning to go to Fisk. And I was just, there aren't words to say how excited I was. And I noticed that my dad didn't seem as excited as I did. My mother was, because she knew I could finally go somewhere where I could pledge AKA. That's the only thing she was concerned about. In July of '58, my dad called me back in the living room again. And I said, this can't be good. But I decided that it was because he was going to congratulate me on being accepted to Fisk. And the other reason I wanted to go to Fisk, there was one of our neighbors, she was older. She had gone to Fisk and married a doctor from Meharry, so that was part of all of that too. So he said, I said, oh, are you excited about me going to Fisk? And he said, well, I've got something to tell you. You're not going to Fisk. And I said, I got accepted at Fisk. And he said, I know, but you're going to the University of Kentucky. And I said, I wanted to ask him, was he crazy, but I knew I'd get hit, so I didn't. I said, I can't go to the University of Kentucky. They only started accepting undergrads in 1954. They had a man in 49 to sue to get in. But I said, and they don't let you live on campus. Where am I going to live? He said, you will be one of the first to live on campus at the University of Kentucky. He said, you have to continue your trailblazing. I said, I've done enough trailblazing. Tillman was enough to last me a lifetime. I don't need to do trailblazing. Well, fast forward to the pictures that you see up there from the University of Kentucky. The first year, the second year, me with the foreign students. Well, that's the graduation from high school. I was one of 3 African American women to be the first to live on campus at the University of Kentucky. Jane Clay and Betty Petty were the other 2. Jane was from Louisville, and Betty was in the picture. She had integrated the high school with me. The only good thing about that was that they gave us private rooms. They put me and Betty in a room together and gave Jane a private room. Now, we had a bath in the room, a full bath, and the white girls got mad, but we tried to explain to them that it was not our decision, because they told us that they did that because they did not want us showering with the white girls. And we said, fine. I mean, we'll take the private room and the private bath. That was good. I'm going to skip to I do want to read a quote from my dorm mother, my first year as a freshman. May 28, 1959. Dear Billie, it has been a real pleasure for me to have had you on my floor. I have enjoyed knowing you. I regret that I did not do more to make this year pleasant for you. I know that there are bad times and good times, that life is not always easy. I wish you the very best in the world. You certainly deserve it. I'm so glad you came to UK, and I want to say, well, I wasn't, and I hope that wherever you go from here, you will remember that my best wishes go with you. Now, she wrote this in the yearbook. Now, what is so surprising about this? She didn't say this many words to me the whole year that I was at the University of Kentucky. She sort of just acted like I was invisible, and I was surprised.
Yeah. So what were some of your experiences with students at the University of Kentucky?
I'm going to make this part shorter, and those of you who heard me speak last week at the University of Chicago will hear this again. I think I see a person back there for my storytelling class. The first year, I just went to class and went back to my dorm. The second year, because I had majored in Spanish, the second year they let me join the Foreign Language Club and the Foreign Students Organization. Now, you couldn't join the other clubs, even the religious clubs, but you could join the Foreign Students Club. I learned something by being a member of the Foreign Students Club. And I learned that when foreign students came to the University of Kentucky, they had an orientation and a plan for them. They assigned them a guidance counselor, or a counselor, so to speak, and they told them specifically how to act and what to do when you left the campus of the University of Kentucky. One of the things they said to them was, be sure when you leave, and they came from with all colors. They were all dark, light, in between. They said, be sure that when you go into the town of Lexington, that you wear your natural native garb so as not to be mistaken for a Negro. As close as I became with the foreign students, they couldn't understand the segregation laws. They kept looking at color, but you look like us. So when they would want me to go to the movies with them, I would say, if I go to the movie with you, I have to sit upstairs. I can't sit down with you. Well, why can't you sit down with us? You look, and they're the foreign students, so you can see me right in there. You look like us. Well, why don't you just wear one of my dresses and don't say anything? It's a girl from India. Then I had to explain the passing law, that if Negroes at the time were caught passing, you could go to jail or worse. I said, and I can't even ride the bus with you. Even if I do ride the bus, I can't sit with you, even if there's an empty seat. And I had a real good looking Cuban boyfriend at the time. He couldn't understand why he couldn't take me because he was darker. Well, and I kept trying to say, it's not about the color necessarily. So he said, well, let me take you to the show and I'll buy the ticket. And I said, if they ask me for international ID, I won't have any. He said, well, then I'll go up and sit up on the balcony with you. And I said, if you get caught sitting on the balcony with me, your foreign visa is gone. So it really was very hard for them to understand, except when the moment of truth came. One day, a guy from India was this Hindu, and on campus he always wore his long white pants and like a tunic. He was dark brown. So one day he decided to go into the town of Lexington with some white students. Now nobody knows why. And he dressed like they did. And he didn't take his international ID. And when he went to eat, they told him, they asked him if he was a Negro. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm Indian. And they said, show us your ID because you dress like everybody else here. And the white students kept trying to convince him, the restaurant, no, he's not a Negro. He's one of our foreign students. Well, because he didn't have his foreign ID, they wouldn't let him eat. So they asked him to leave, and they all left with him. After that, the University of Kentucky went into damage control. They sent out a letter to their foreign students that said, reminder, when you go into the town of Lexington, always wear your native garb and carry your international ID so that you will not be mistaken for a Negro. After that, the foreign students who were my friends asked if they could meet with me in the campus hall. Oh, the one part I do want to just mention before that is being hungry. On Sunday, when the cafeteria was closed at 1 o'clock, there was nowhere for black students to eat, the three of us. The foreign students could eat at the local restaurants, and so one day they asked me, when I finally told them again I couldn't go with them, what do you do when you get hungry after 1 o'clock on Sunday? I said, well, I got one or two options. I can either ask a white or foreign person to bring me back some food. I could go stand at the back door of the restaurant, order my food, and stand out there and wait for it until even in bad weather. Or I could just eat snacks. So my parents actually sent me a lot of care packages. But after the incident, the foreign students that were my friends said, we need to apologize to you. You've been telling us this, but we didn't think it was like you said until it happened to one of us. Then they asked if they could ask me some questions. And I said, sure. And 5 of the questions were, why would your country treat you and other Negroes like this? 2, why don't white people like you? It's not just about your skin color, is it? 3, why do Negroes accept this horrible treatment? 4, you are so nice, why are you not really angry? And 5, do you want to come to my country to live with me? I was 19. I didn't have any more answers to those questions than they did necessarily. And I just wanted to end my story with the thought, if you fast forward to 2025, what kinds of questions would today's foreign students be asking you? Or would they already have experienced the answers? Thanks. Okay.
Billie, why did you leave the University of Kentucky after 2 years?
Because I hated it. But that was, I told my dad that if I had to go back there, I was going to join the waves. I wasn't going to go, I couldn't. I had lost 2 years of high school. I had lost 2 years of college. So that time I think he thought I was serious. And I ended up going to a school that was the most wonderful school that you can imagine, and you'll have to figure it out in my book. This school was so diverse in 1960 that they called it a communist school. This school, the black students that I met at this school were so wonderful. We had our own little, I call it Harlem Renaissance. There was the son of a poet laureate. There were nephews of famous musicians. There was one person who became an internationally known famous musician. And then there were our friends, our policy students from the movie The Policy Queen. a king. We all loved it. I graduated from there, and I can truly say I had 2 happy years of college. Then in '72, I went to graduate school for my master's, and it was as bad as the University of Kentucky. Stay tuned. It'll be in my book.
Well, Billie, your story is more important now than ever with the state of our country and the world. And it's such an honor to be able to talk to you today. Thank you so much.
I wanted to, as I leave you, and thank you so much for coming. I wanted to leave you with 3 intentions. 1, tell your story. Tell it while you can still tell it. 2, leave your legacy, as we heard about here. And 3, go make a difference in the world. Thank you.